Luke Braun, you ready to tell me why Brian Flores is going to come in here to Jacksonville, Florida and do a number on Doug Pederson's offense?
Maybe.
We got it here on a crossover edition. Locked on Jaguars, Locked on Vikings.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the app and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. We appreciate you joining Locked On Vikings and Locked On Jaguars for the Thursday crossover edition that is all across the Locked On Podcast Network. I am Tony Wiggins. He is Luke Braun. We thank the everydayers for both of our shows for being here today, and you can find us wherever you listen or watch your podcast. Luke, man, y'all got a good team up there. Playing a little rough lately, but I can't use the word lately when I describe the Jaguars playing rough because they've been playing rough all season, man. So let's just hope we have a nice, healthy contest on Sunday.
Always hope for that. The Vikings have kind of gone from, they started the season white hot, and now I would call them more of a week-to-week proposition. What kind of Vikings team? Maybe even a half-to-half proposition. They've had a couple of games where the first half has gone one way, and then they kind of come out different in the other half, different energy, different strategies, different adjustments. But it's been inconsistent, I guess I'll call it, on both sides of the ball, but good. Like it's the good has been there. It's just they can't put that good together for like a full 60 minutes, but it's been good enough for that to still win 6 of their 8.
Here's what surprised me about you guys before we get too deep into what your season has been like. Over the last, I want to say, let's go 4 years. All right. The best players on this team 4 years ago were arguably Dalvin Cook, Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen, wide receiver in Houston, Diggs, Stephon Diggs, and Danielle Hunter. Shout out to Smith, the safety. I know he's a great player and all of that. But it's arguable that those are the 5 best players on this team 4 years ago. They're all gone.
Yeah, everybody but Smith. It's a totally different group of people.
And I'm thinking like, okay, at some point, this is like a little bit of a rebuild, isn't it? No, it's not. These dudes, it's supposed to be, but record-wise, it's not, and they're in a tough division.
This is you've just described the phrase that makes Vikings fans cringe. It's the competitive rebuild. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah has been the GM. This is his 3rd year now. He has swapped out all of those pieces except Harrison Smith, who I guess will die a Viking. But Danielle Hunter in Houston, Jonathan Grenard in now, and Andrew Van Ginkel, who by the way didn't practice on Wednesday, so that's something to watch.
Player too. Yeah.
With Eric Kendricks leaving, they got Blake Cashman now. He's in on a 3-year deal. And you go through, obviously Justin Jefferson in, Christian Darrisaw, huge piece. He's out for the year. But Cam Robinson played pretty well on Sunday night on 2 days of practice. So that you guys are familiar enough with him.
Sure.
And all of those pieces have swapped out. Now they're having the Sam Darnold moment and everything like that. But they didn't do it all at once. They didn't do, they didn't want to turn into the Panthers, where the Panthers go into a rebuild and then it's not good right away because it's a rebuild. And then they torch everything and start another rebuild. And now suddenly they're going on the 3rd straight year being the worst team in the league. They didn't want to do that, right? They wanted to still remain to switch out some pieces at a time and do it gradually over time. Suddenly you look back and you're like, this is a totally different team, but it never quite felt like there was a singular moment where things switched over. And that was very much by design.
Man, that sounds like to me either great drafting and developing or great pro personnel, especially if those guys are free agents that came off of other teams. So that's real good pro press. And that's what, if people don't understand how these personnel departments work, that's what pro personnel departments do. That's different from player personnel, and that's different from college scouting. They just watch other teams and figure out
that's pro scouting.
Can find. Right. And they bring people in. Sam Darnold, to me, that has been the biggest story that caught me by surprise. I always liked his arm talent, but I just thought he was just another dude with really good arm talent, like Jameis Winston, that had this fatal flaw, and that is turning the ball over. Somehow, though, Kevin O'Connell, who I really, really like as a coach and is totally, totally underrated in my opinion, at least Doug Pederson gave him a lot of props today and said part of Darnold's success is Justin Jefferson. And then I'm paraphrasing, he said, and Kevin O'Connell puts him in really, really good position, good scheme, good coaching, good play calling. What do you think about that? And give me your assessment of Sam Darnold.
Yeah, the thing I always say on these, because everybody asks this question, so Vikings fans have heard this spiel a lot, but he's grown up. That's really what it is. In New York, he was 21, 22 years old, trying to play hero ball all the time. He thought he kind of had to eat the whole pie himself, and that he couldn't, you've seen quarterbacks fail that way a lot when they don't realize that, no, it's about the team around you. And it really took a year of him being an unambiguous backup, where it wasn't competing with Baker Mayfield or competing with, Teddy Bridgewater or whatever. It wasn't that. It was a year in San Francisco with pretty good coaches over there, by the way, watching Brock Purdy get in trouble and dump off on 3rd and 10 for a 4-yard gain and punt, come back to the sideline and have the coaches say, good play.
Good job.
And realize, wait, that's okay. That kind of thing, watching him dump the ball off, set up a 3rd and 2, convert it, and realize that he actually did that on easy mode, and choosing the easy path might actually be better. And and I think just literally growing up, getting a little older. He's 27 now, right? And you just mature a little bit. And that has turned him into a little bit more of a chilled out Sam Darnold. A little bit. He turned the ball over 3 times last week.
Yeah, I saw it.
A little bit. But it's less than it ever was in those places where he was just not a viable starter. Now he's a viable starter, but I'm going to be honest, they're going to turn the ball over. Like, you're getting turnovers. Congratulations. You can rely on getting some turnovers from Sam Darnold. It's just how it goes. But then all that arm talent and all that ability, throw to every level of the field. You got to defend every blade of grass. All that stuff suddenly matters when you're not giving away 4 or 5 possessions a game.
Absolutely. And I'm going to steal that phrase in segment 2, hero ball, because we are very familiar with that around here with the quarterback that we have, even though I don't think it's been as bad as some of the other picks in the draft. A little bit of the luster of the shine has had. There's a couple of games where it's been taken off of Brian Flores real quick, but I still think that Brian Flores, for the games that I've watched, even if the other team's scoring points, he's able to manufacture little stretches even in those games where that allows the Vikings to actually come back and make a couple of runs. Like they did it, I believe it was the game against Detroit. It's like I thought it would get blown out, and then all of a sudden here they come chipping back. I think that's a sign of a good defensive coordinator. Yeah.
I mean, Flores is a very smart guy. He has really gone completely off the beaten path. He's doing something nobody else is doing. People are copycatting him on pressure packages a little bit, like they're taking his blitzes, which everybody does with everybody, but nobody's doing what Flores is doing defensively. It's the most exotic defense in the league. And that means that when you crack it. And it's still in its sort of testing phases where it doesn't have, ways to minimize the damage versus its weakness. You live in a quarter system, you find quarters beaters. They're going to get those on you, but you have ways to minimize that. Flores hasn't quite figured out its margins yet, so you can get games like the Detroit game where they just throw over the middle every single play and you just can't stop it, and they just, they score 4 long touchdown drives in a row, and that ends up deciding the game. But then if you can find that adjustment, or if you can get to them, like there's a lot of chaos created. Yeah. So down to down, you can move the ball on the Flores defense, but you have to do it really consistently. And the second you take 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, get behind the chains, that's when the bad stuff starts to happen to you. And so that's going to transition, I guess, into a lot of the questions that I have for you about the Jaguars and how to attack this is how are they at throwing over the middle of the field? What are their favorite blitz counters and all that? And then we can get into all of that with the Jaguars next.
Absolutely, we will. And when you were describing that and some of the things that he does on defense, I don't know if, I just started shaking my head, man, because I'm like, we got a problem, dog, because that is like something that does not line up with some things that the Jaguars don't do well. All right, here's what we're going to do. We'll come back and Luke is going to ask me some questions and get in depth about what's going on with Jacksonville for all of the Vikings fans, especially the ones that might be making a November trip to Jacksonville, Florida. I think it's going to be about 78 degrees, maybe 80 degrees. So if you're coming down here on vacation, you'll enjoy yourself. And then at the end of the show, we'll have our keys to victory. We'll do a little back and forth and tell you how we think this thing is going to go. We'll do all of that in just a second here on a crossover edition of Locked On NFL and Locked On Vikings.
This Crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by Zbiotics. Pre-alcohol probiotic drink by Zbiotics is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. So here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. So just remember to make Zbiotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. So if you have any reasons to perhaps imbibe a little bit this week, go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and learn more. You can get 15% off of your first order when you use LockedOnNFL at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off.
All right, rocking it back here with my man Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings. I'm Tony Wiggins with Locked On Jaguars. Look, what do you want to know, man? I'm gonna give you all the good stuff. I'm gonna give you all the gossip, give you everything that's going on around here because it's been a little bit of a hot mess.
So one main question I have, it's not about this matchup at all, but is this possibly a week where Doug Pederson gets fired? Like, are we almost there? Yes.
Okay. I would think that first of all, Shad Khan is a little bit slow to fire people. The only person I believe he has removed in the middle of the season was Doug Pederson. Not Doug Pederson.
Urban, right?
Gus. Urban. Yeah, of course. He should have removed him early. But the only coach that has been here for a long time that he's removed was Gus Bradley, and he did that at the end of the year. And Doug Marrone took over for the last two games. And that leads to another point. He's never really cut off the entire regime every time he fires people. He always keeps someone left over. He kept Doug that time. And then when he got rid of Doug, he kept Trent Baalke from when he let go of Doug and Dave Caldwell. So the Jaguar fan base, and I'm probably one of the people leading the cause that thinks that if they do make another move, that they need to make a clean sweep and start totally over and do this thing the right way.
Totally hit the plunger, yeah. Okay. So you mentioned something about Trevor Lawrence and like hero ball and all that stuff. So my question is a broader one. It's the Brian Flores defense is the entire thesis of it is that we are going to pressure you every play. We're going to blitz you all the time, or sim pressure if that's what you're worse against. And even though that's going to put holes in our coverage that are, on the whiteboard, these blitz coverages lose to a lot of different stuff, and you're going to hit some chunks on us, you can't string those together over and over and over and over again. Eventually, you're going to take a sack, throw a stupid interception, and we're going to create these really big, explosive defensive plays that get the ball back. And so it turns into a bend, don't break thing. You'll get first downs, but you'll also get turnovers. So with Trevor Lawrence, how does he respond to that kind of thing? Is he consistent throwing over the middle of the field? Does he get the ball out quickly? Does he panic under pressure? What happens under that super high, volcanic environment? Is that where he thrives?
If they're in 2 minute, if they're on the ball,
interesting.
And they're playing,
because the Vikings are very bad defensively in 2 minute,
and that's when he's at his best. But I don't think they're going to do that from the very beginning because, as you know, if you get in 2 minutes and you start rushing, 2 minutes is fine as long as it's working. As long as you're converting first downs, it's working. The second you go 3 and out 2 times in a 2 minute drill and use up 35 seconds off the clock and your defense is huffing and puffing, it looks disastrous. It looks like you're hurrying up. It's like you're going to hell in a Ferrari. You know what I'm saying? Like, ain't no use in rushing, dog. It ain't going nowhere. And that's what happens when the Jaguars get into that type of thing that can be very effective for them at the end of the game. But when you talk about the pressure aspect of it, no, that's not a good thing for Trevor Lawrence, especially when it's disguised. One, the offensive line is, I wouldn't even call it average, even though we traded Cam Robinson away with a little bit of game still left in the season. They're not even average, they're below average. They have these really good stretches, just like Trevor Lawrence. Sometimes they look lights out and sometimes they don't. And that's a microcosm of this entire Doug Pederson regime. They started the first year he was here 2-7 and ended up 9-8 and made the playoffs. They started the next year, which was last year, 8-3 and ended up 9-8 and made the playoffs. Now they're 2-7. And sometimes they start games off slow and come on like gangbusters at the end. And sometimes they start off fast and then they fade. The thing that they're consistent about is being inconsistent. So is he capable of handling pressure? Absolutely. Does he have a demonstrated performance of handling pressure because of the offensive line? And now they have a depleted wide receiver core? No, he does not have a demonstrated performance. In fact, he's one of those guys that'll play a little bit of hero ball when things start going bad around him. Now, I think since he's been in the league, he leads the league in 2 categories: turnovers and drops. So there you go. That's the inconsistency. That creates that variance that I'm talking about. It's like you want to blame him, but you don't want to blame him because the drops usually come first, and then the turnovers come when he feels like he has to do something to carry this ball club.
So I guess then what the Vikings will want to do is get him into that mentality and make him feel like, oh my God, it's 3rd and 12. I got to do something. Elsewhere on the Jaguars, well, I did kind of want to ask about the tackle. You've got Walker Little now playing at left tackle, right? And that's the deal. And I forget who's at right tackle, but how's that going without Cam Robinson now?
Anton Harrison, the first-round pick from 2022, is at right tackle. He's their best lineman to me. Really? He played left tackle in college. He's at right tackle. He played every game at right tackle. The thing about Walker Little is that was Urban's first year. He was a 2nd-round pick. And it was a head scratcher because you said, okay, they're just going to use him to replace Cam Robinson. That's what they're going to do. What they actually did was let Juwan Taylor go in free agency to Kansas City for $80 million over 4 years. And they decided they were going to play Walker Little at right tackle. Didn't work. Played with his hands too low, got bullied, got pushed around. Had missed 2 years one because of an injury in college, the other one because of COVID. And then he basically redshirted as a rookie. So what ended up happening was they drafted Anton Harrison. And they said that Walker Little was going to be their swing lineman. He's going to be left guard, left tackle, right tackle. You use a 2nd-round pick on that guy. And then we were coming into the season thinking either he isn't very good or they just don't really have a plan. And they think they can make the playoffs this year. They're going to ride it as far as they can until the trade deadline. And either him or Cam's going to get traded. They either decided they're not going to keep Walker Little beyond this year. He's a free agent next year. And they're going to move him and try to get something for him because he's young, or they're going to go ahead and move Cam. They decided
who's also a free agent after the year.
Right, who's also a free agent. So they don't do deals in the middle of the year. Walker Little has not shown them enough, in my opinion. And maybe this is what they wanted to see once the games got to the point where they were 2-6 before they made that trade. He hasn't shown them enough that they're going to franchise tag him or give him a big contract. That he just hasn't shown that. They're going to be in the market for another left tackle. So it's a little bit perplexing. Of course, we have Ezra Cleveland at left guard, who Coach Phil Rauscher, who I just named 2 people y'all are very familiar with.
Phil Rauscher's over there. Right? He's still loud as heck.
Yeah, he's still loud. And the thing about Rauscher, he's a good dude, though. But Rauscher he's one of the most maligned people around here because the line hasn't played well. And what happened is he has been a little bit of a mystery. Like, you wonder if they love him so much because Rauscher vouches for him and loves him so much. They re-signed him, gave him a very team-friendly 3-year, sort of $28-29 million deal in the offseason. But he's just underwhelming. He's just a dude. He's the kind of guy that needs to be your swing guard and not your starter if you're talking about making a run into the playoffs. I think there's a reason Minnesota let him go. Yeah, well, they were. It was the same deal as Cam Robinson, where it was clear he was just going to be a free agent. So they got the last 8 games out of him, and they had Dalton Risner at the time. They were pretty happy with that guard. Now they're starting Blake Brandel, who's been something of a swing lineman that they're giving a starting job to. He's done all right. I do want to ask real quick about the defense before we kind of go into the more predictive element here. What's the plan for Justin Jefferson? How does this defense handle a clear number 1 threat at receiver? They better go out there. You ever seen cops when they lay those strips down in the street and they bust the tires? They better go out there and lay some strips down on the turf, because they don't stop number 1 wide receivers and guys like that. And even if they contain them, when the plays need to be made, those guys usually make plays. Now, we got one of our own, and he's also from LSU. His name's Brian Thomas Jr. He's a he's been popping off, player. Right? Yeah. He's popping off. And you know what? His the game isn't really the same, but he reminds me a little bit of the Justin Jefferson, the whole aura. And I'll tell you why. And that's because when Jefferson came out, he was an afterthought. He went late. The Jaguars picked Caleb Von Chase on two picks before Justin Jefferson went. But it was like, well, the kid that's sitting out at LSU, he's the one. It was Jamar Chase because he was so dynamic. And people forgot. Well, folks didn't learn their lesson, and folks figured, well, it was Malik Neighbors, and they had the Heisman
He was
Trophy
truly
guy.
the guy, yeah. And Brian Thomas, he's like the deep threat, right? Like he's
a 5-star recruit. He runs a 4.3. He's 6'3", 212 pounds. He caught a lot of touchdowns, but it was all because these other people over here. That's not true. That kid can flat out play, and if they redrafted right now, he'd go in the top 10. He'd probably go before Rome Odunze. That's how good he is. So, I think Justin Jefferson is going to have a field day. The key is, though, with Sam Darnold is staying away from Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen. I don't know if you know this, but people don't talk about Trayvon Walker nationally. He scored a touchdown last week. And prior to that, he has like 6.5 sacks on the year. I think he has 7 now. And he has 17 sacks in the last 25 games. That kid ain't no bust. He's just not
one of the most underrated players in the league.
He's just not Aiden Hutchinson.
Preaching to the choir, baby.
Yeah, he's just not Aiden Hutchinson when it comes to pressures and sack numbers because he's he's a power player, sort of like Cam Jordan. So it's just a different thing, man. But if Sam Darnold can stay upright and avoid those edges, Justin Jefferson definitely will have time to get open.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into the part where we try to figure out what happens in this game.
All right, let's do it. And you'll bring us back after I let everyone else know about more sponsors for today. We're going to come back and do the keys to victory and finish up here on the Locked On Jaguars and Locked On Vikings crossover in just a second. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. Yeah, our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. You need to get ready. I'm telling you, if your team isn't even playing well this year, you can still make you some money. And right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you make your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And today's show is also brought to you and sponsored by PrizePicks. That's right. Look, man, it's daily fantasy sports, and they're the #1 daily fantasy sports entity in America. And what you do is you go on there with about 10 million other members, but guess what? You're not playing against them. You're just playing against the system. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. So here's what you do, man. You pick between 2 and 6 projections. If you get them all right, you get paid. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game.
All right, Tony, let's try to figure out what's going to happen this one. I don't know about you. I don't like trying to predict the score. I think usually the numbers you say are pretty arbitrary, but I think we can try to suss out exactly how this one's going to go. So in the most abstract sense, it sounds like when somebody walks in with a very clear guy that they want to funnel the offense through, that the Jaguars aren't going to sell everything out to stop that guy. They're going to let that guy get his yards and hope they can win the game anyways, which, by the way, that's what the Lions did, and it worked out pretty well for them. So that's not as crazy of a strategy as it might seem. But I mean, is that do I have the right vibe on that with the Jaguars? Is this maybe a game that Justin Jefferson can go get his?
He can get some. They're just a bend but don't break team, and that sounds about right with Jacksonville. I will tell you this: I never expected them to get blown out in any game, and they only got blown out once, and that was on national TV against Buffalo. And then they let it get away from them in London against Chicago. So they're usually their own worst enemy with how they come out of the locker room. I do believe they got a problem, and you're going to notice it. Everyone notices. They rotate their defensive ends after 3 plays. I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing ever. You got Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker, a guy that has $80 million in guarantees, and the dude that was the number 1 overall pick. And there are times when the other team is driving at critical points of the game, and they're not even on the field. You're going to wonder why. And people just say that's Ryan Nielsen and the way that he does things. But they've pretty much been a bend but don't break team. The problem is when they do break, it's like a dam, and it's hard to stop. And they just let things go on. And for these little stretches that really cost them a whole bunch of games. They've lost 5 games by 5 points or less. That's just who they are.
So is it the kind of game then, the Vikings have gotten out to some really white hot fast starts this year. If that happens again, the Vikings get up 10-0, 17-0, which has happened a lot. Is it the kind of thing where Jags fans are just turning it off? Or because the Vikings do let teams hang around and crawl back, but you got to be capable of it.
Well, that's a problem then, because if you're going to be a sitting duck for them, the one thing about them, they're scrappy. And
they are scrappy because if you're down 17-0, it's halftime. Maybe you get 1 touchdown at the end and you're 17-7 and you feel it, right? Like I feel like some teams are just still going to feel really bad and just keep getting smoked. And some teams go, no, we got this. Like, is that their character? Yeah.
And this is the good part of that. It's bad that they get behind, and it's bad that they have this big, I use the word variance in how they play. And it's not even from week to week. It's not even from game to game. It's from quarter to quarter. And the thing about that, Luke, is don't get ahead. I told Peter Bukowski this in that same stadium a couple of weeks ago. Green Bay was up 27-17 with the ball. It's like 8 minutes to go, and they're just running the ball. And they got a 3 and out. I texted him, and I said, this is a mistake, because this is exactly what they do. They want you to sit there. Doug Pederson will hold his timeouts until tomorrow, and he will score, and then the defense will get ramped up. If they get the ball back within 2 minutes, they get to go into their 2-minute offense, which they thrive at. So if the Vikings make a tragic mistake in this game, it will be getting out to a fast start and then saying we got them, and looking at their record saying they're 2-7. The next thing you know, the game's going to be tied, because they are that type of team that are capable of doing that. The problem is it takes that motivation for them to be losing in order for them to start playing well, and nobody around here can figure out why they just can't do that from the very beginning. You'll see it. You'll look at their record and go 2-7, and you'll go, they're way better than that. What is wrong? And that's the problem with Doug Pederson and this team right now. And the people in Philly said this is the same thing that happened to him up there after he won the Super Bowl. It's like, it's a head scratcher, because he's a nice guy and you know what they're capable of sometimes, but they just don't always do it.
So Vikings games have been very swingy. You could describe a lot of them, and a lot of them have, right? Very uncreative gamers call it a tale of 2 halves every single week. And if that's where we're at, and the Vikings get off to a hot start, they go into halftime, the Jags crawl back, it ends up being a close game. If the Vikings do pull that game out, and it happens again, right? Oh, nice comeback, moral victory, but fell short. Is that the end for Doug Pederson?
I would think, because they have a game next week against Detroit, no, unless the owner wants to send a message, because they know they're going to get steamrolled against Detroit. And Detroit had to, trust me, and this ain't no slight against Minnesota, but you saw Detroit and you've seen them and you watch them closely.
What they've been doing to everybody.
And how they do it. Teams like that.
You got to go there, right?
Yeah. Teams like that, they're going to come in and they just uppercutting you all day. And it's just like, if you got any flaws, they're going to find them. If you got a weakness, boom, they're going to hit you. So the thing about it is, there's a chance that it happens. I've been looking forward for a couple of weeks, but it hasn't happened. And Shad is slow to fire. He's slow to change. You got to wonder, though, because of Trevor, if he fires Doug Pederson, he's going to probably fire Press Taylor, the offensive coordinator. And then you're leaving like Mike McCoy to run the offense, and that's the quarterback's coach. I think they need to make sure.
That is a name I have not heard in a long time.
I know it, right? I know it. It sounds like something from the Hall of Fame, right? But no, Trevor also is banged up now. They went and got CJ Beathard off the practice squad. This is a story that came out.
Old friend.
Yeah, this is a story that came out after I recorded my local, but prior to us recording here, they had to go get better because Trevor didn't even practice today because he has a little bit of an upper body injury. And that some people were speculating that what that is they know they're cooked and it's a PR move. They're going to get hammered. And at least people can say they got hammered while their quarterback isn't out. So we'll keep an eye on that to make sure he's going to be available. But they're banged up at receiver. Christian Kirk is out for the season. Brian Thomas Jr. is ailing a little bit. Gabe Davis has been out. It's just, for me, Travis Etienne hasn't played well, and he's been banged up. And when he wasn't banged up, he wasn't playing well. Just like Murphy's Law, everything that could go wrong does go wrong. I'll tell you this from our perspective. I got a feeling, without predicting a score, Justin Jefferson will be huge. But I think Sam Darnold is going to throw a touchdown to a tight end, and I think Aaron Jones is going to catch a screen pass and take it. They have a problem with running backs catching the ball here too.
Oh boy. He does like to do that, although the screens have been kind of weird. That might be a movable force against stoppable object.
Yes, sir.
But we'll see what happens here. I think as it has been with the Vikings for years and years and years, you can be favored by 14 points and it'll still be a close game. Right now, the line at FanDuel is Vikings by 4.5 on the road. Certainly never going to be one to overlook. Tony, thank you so much for coming and hanging out here on Crossover Thursday.
No doubt. Thank you. And remember, it's sponsored by Thursday Crossover, sponsored by PrizePicks. Make sure you download the app, enter the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 off of your first $5 bet. Make sure you tap into Locked On NFL too. 2 shows. Tyler Rowland, the madman, hits you up early in the morning with a double shot of espresso, and I'll slide through with you on the barbershop, and we'll chat it up with some of the biggest experts from around the National Football League that know your team better than anyone else. Until next time, good luck for a healthy game Sunday. If there are Vikings fans traveling, please travel safely, and hopefully we'll have a good game that does not involve any injuries. Until then, you guys take care and take care of each other, and we'll see you. I will have a post-game. Luke, do you do a post-game Sunday?
We got a postcast, yes, live
Postcast.
on Locked On Minnesota Sports with Sam Ekstrom, Ron Johnson, and Luke Inman.
There you go. So both of us will be doing postcasts on Sunday. Make sure you check them out wherever you get your podcast. All right, y'all. Take care. We'll see you next time.